Hello, welcome to the third episode of the Sports Gazette Lockdown Podcast. Once again, I'm joined by a room full of sporting legends, I would suppose. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, Abi Burton, GB and England Rugby Sevens player. Hello, Abi.
Hello, thank you for having me.
No worries, good to have you here. Julia Cook, who was obviously Tokyo-bound reporter and big athletics geek. Hi, Julia.
Hello.
And Laoishe MacCana as well, another Sports Gazette reporter.
Hello.
Good. Great to have you all here, guys. I hope you're all doing well in your home confines from the lockdown. Today we're obviously going to be focusing on the Olympics and the coronavirus's impact on the Olympics. So a bit different from the past couple of weeks where we sort of gone a bit beyond sport. But first of all, I just kind of wanted to start by getting what you guys have been doing in the lockdown that you found as your guilty pleasure. I did it with my guest last week, and I'm keen to get to find out more how you're keeping busy. So I'll start with you, Abi.
So my guilty pleasure probably flicks between two things. So I'd probably say firstly Netflix. I'm literally obsessed with RuPaul's Drag Race. I literally sit there waiting every week to watch it, and then I rewatch the older seasons as well. But then the other thing as well, like reading. I really don't get a lot of time to read usually, but I'm really into war novels, which is a bit weird, but I'm loving reading those at the moment. So they're probably my guilty pleasures.
have you got a favourite?
Birdsong probably. I really enjoy that book. And then I'm reading another one at the moment, which is also, this is off the war topic, but it's called Power, and it's about women who basically rule the world, basically.
Sounds good. I'm sure my two other guests agree with you there. Julia, what about you?
I'd have to agree with the Netflix one. I've started watching Tiger King. Have you guys seen it?
Yeah, completely.
It's so wild. So yeah, I'm only halfway through, but at least you've seen it. Oh, you give it a watch. It's just crazy.
It's really good.
So yeah, probably that.
Perfect. And you, Laoishe, what have you been up to?
I've been acting like a 12-year-old child. I just go outside and bounce on my trampoline for hours in the day. I'll just spend hours on it. It's really weird, but it's good fun.
That's
I used to do gymnastics. I can do flips and stuff. I don't just plain bounce.
Okay. Well, I mean, we've done these things. You just got to try and keep yourself busy, haven't you? If we go saying, and on the topic of busy, we'll get straight into it, Abi, because I'd imagine obviously you've come on here from a run, but I'm obviously training for you is going to have been interesting. But first of all, I just want to get what your first reaction was, obviously, when the Olympics were postponed. You obviously have been building up to this, and you had your first camp with the GB girls. So what was your first sort of reaction to the cancellation?
There was a lot of speculation about it to begin with, because I kept getting notifications from BBC Sport and people saying this and people saying that about the Olympics. But we all kept putting it in our group chat saying, "Oh, is it cancelled?" And none of us actually knew to begin with, until it actually then came out in the media that it was cancelled. And at first I was gutted, just from having our first camp and where we had started at our first camp, and meeting all the girls and us just playing with no sort of structure, because we'd all come from different nations. So I was gutted to begin with, because it's that's something that we'd been building for for me. It's being in the programme for the past this is my second season, been building for that for 2 years, and that's been my sole focus for 2 years. And it's it was gutting to begin with, but then to look at it in I sat down with my housemate and we spoke about it, but it's if we look at it in a different way, that gives us another year to get more experience under our belt. So it's our team is between the ages of 18 to 35, but the majority of us are under the age of 25, and a lot of us, so there's at least 5 or 6 of us who are 20 and under. So it's another year for us to get so much more experience, and another year for us to play more. And you can't beat us having that playing experience, which means we'll have 9 World Series next year and the Olympics. So looking at it from that point of view, that's really exciting that we've got another year to build on, and it puts us in the best possible place when we come to the Olympics. But at first I was absolutely gutted, like really, really gutted. But then you've just got to try and think of the positives out of a rubbish situation, really.
And for you, how long has this sort of been a dream? Obviously, I know you were involved in athletics and swimming as a youngster, so obviously the Olympics from that perspective. But then when you went down the rugby route, that dream might have left you. But how long have you aspired to compete at the games?
Oh, since as long as I can remember, like wanting to compete in the Olympics with swimming and then with athletics. But then when I chose rugby, it was kind of like, maybe that's not going to happen. And then my dream kind of shifted to playing in a World Cup. But then when because I never thought that I'd ever have the opportunity to play sevens, just because of the type of athlete I am, coming from playing a forward, playing back row in 15s, that I never thought that I would ever get the opportunity to play in sevens. And then like I kind of buried the dream because I was like, it's very unrealistic. It's not going to happen. And then I got the opportunity to go into the sevens, which meant it was an Olympic sport. And honestly, it made me want it even more, to be honest with you. Just that I didn't have it taken away from me, but I kind of felt in myself that it wasn't going to happen. And then it reignited that dream, and like it makes me want it even more that now it's a year later as well, which is pretty cool because I didn't think I could want it anymore. So yeah.
And how are you finding training at home? Obviously, have they been sending you programs, or have you been sort of left to do your own stuff?
Yeah, so we initially, because we only thought this was going to be 3 weeks long, we got given like a 3-week program for us to do, and I chose to stay down in London with my housemate, who also plays in the sevens, Sydney Gregson, so that we could train together and still keep each other motivated. Because at the start of this all happening, we didn't know the Olympics were going to still be cancelled. It was going to actually be cancelled, so that meant that we could still train together, do everything together. So we've been given, like, for example, so like today, we had like a 5K to do today, and then we've got gym in the afternoon, so we've got an upper session, and then we've got like a little circuit to do after that. So we have something every single day to do, except we have two days off in the week, and it's still following our training program for what we were doing before. But then over the next couple of weeks, we're going to have a bit more free reign. So I think we're going to get given like a menu of different things that we can do. Because I really enjoy like the CrossFit workout type stuff, instead of like the running for horrendously long and that being all disgusting. So yeah, I prefer that type of stuff. So it's kind of nice that over the next couple of weeks, it's like a bit more of a break from routine and more into like you can do it whenever like you want, as long as it's like you get a certain amount done during a week. So yeah, that's kind of good. But we've the only thing that we've kind of struggled with is equipment. So like with all of our gym stuff, we've got like a couple of kettlebells, but other than that, like we don't really have like much, except our one of our next door neighbours saw us like working out with all the kettlebells and stuff like that. He was like, "I've got a bar, do you want to borrow it?" And we're like, "Yes, let me borrow it, please." So yeah, that's like, but like just even that, like that's made a massive difference to our training. And like it's our neighbours from like across the back garden, and like we've never met them before, and it's like amazing that like this like situation, people are just making the best out of it and like helping each other out and stuff like that. Like that has made a massive difference to our training. Just even someone lending us a bar now, because we can now do more weight and like keep our muscle mass up and stuff like that, and try and keep certain conditioning up. So yeah, it's been difficult, but like we're working around it now, and yeah, it's been all right now.
Yeah, and but probably quite good for your motivation that you've got one of your teammates with you and keep going.
Yeah.
What I was going to say, so after the Olympics, was the plan, and is the plan still to go back to 15s and target a World Cup?
So not initially, no. So like I weighed up like all of my options, and then I've also got selected for so I've got the Sir Steve Hansen Award, which is it's from the Commonwealth Games. Yeah. So basically they fund us for the next however many years until Birmingham 2022. So that means that I was going to stay in sevens anyway, because I wouldn't, like my other dream is to also play in front of all my family. Yeah. And that was something that I really, really want to aspire to do. I'm not, it's not like I'm hopefully not getting on to the end of my career, we hope, but like only being 20, like the opportunities to go to a World Cup, like I don't need to rush it all in one go. I think that like I can enjoy the sevens and enjoy a sevens World Cup and enjoy the Commonwealth Games, and then if when I do go back to 15s, then I can put my 100% into that, rather than across the past couple of years people flick between codes and it doesn't necessarily work for them, or it just ends up ruining the bodies because they're flicking 7s 15s. So like I decided in myself that I was staying until after the Commonwealths, and then going to make my decisions then of whether it's time for me to go back to 15s and try and make a World Cup, or me stay and travel the world playing rugby. So yeah, like both of them are amazing options. Like I'd love to do either of them. So yeah.
And obviously being a Yorkshire girl, would a Yorkshire premiership side on the women's side of things push you more towards 15s as well? That sort of inspiration to play for your own county?
That's a tricky one. That is a tricky one. I don't know, because I've like lived away from home now for 4 years. So I went to Hartbury College for 2 years. So I played at Gloucester for a year, and then straight into sevens. And now my life's like down here. All my friends and like everyone, like uni's down here. My friends are down here. Like jobs down here. Rugby's down here. So it's like, that's difficult. But then I would love to play for Yorkshire again. Like play for it would sway me to want to go back, because it's like then I can play in front of all my like grandparents and stuff like that, because like they watch me over the TV, but like they haven't probably seen me play in years. So it probably would sway me to want to go back to 15s.
Well, that's great. And just finally on the obviously the World Series, you obviously had, I think, was it two meets left?
Yeah, you don't include Hong Kong.
And that they are postponed, obviously, but they're hoping to fit them in. So yeah. I guess that's weird that in all this training, sort of factoring that in. Have you heard much from them whether if it gets to sort of September October when the new season meant to start, will they just get sack rid, or are they desperate to try and fit these in?
Yeah, so they've rescheduled Hong Kong, that's in September. Yeah, they've also rescheduled Paris, that's meant to be in September as well. We haven't heard anything about Langford, which is Canada. I'm not 100% sure whether they're actually going to redo that one, because it's only a women's leg, and the other two are men and women's, which we would like to say that they would reschedule it, but I'm unsure if they actually will, because both men and women's brings in more revenue. They're losing more money by not putting them on, whereas just a single tournament, there's obviously not going to be more people coming. But
that's interesting. Obviously, I know they rescheduled Twickenham, which is obviously just the men's. So
yeah.
Maybe they should be trying to fit that in.
Yeah, I do agree with you. We just haven't heard anything about them rescheduling Langford, and we don't know if they will, which is a bit of a shame, because Langford is like amazing to play at. Like it's weird, because that's the only tournament that we play on Astro, which is actually quite a cool change from like just playing on grass all the time. I actually feel pretty quick on it, which is very new. But yeah, so they've been rescheduled, but I don't know whether they're actually just going to just sack them off, to be honest with you. Because if you think about it, if they redid all three, then you'd have, if my maths is correctly, you'd have 9 World Series next year, and we're only used to playing 6, if I'm counting right. Yeah. Which, with our squad size, I don't know how it would work, because we currently have 15 players contracted, and we take 12 to every tournament, or 13, which if you're accounting for injuries, there's at least always going to be 1 or 2 people injured. I don't know if, like, with our squad size, it would massively benefit us having that many World Series. It would definitely benefit us younger players to be able to get more experience under our belts and be able to flog us a bit more, rather than some of our older girls who probably just need a bit more rest. But yeah, I don't know if they will just completely sack them, but yeah, it will be very interesting. It'll be interesting in how it plays out next season with that many. But yeah, it'll be exciting, and it will also be like the unknown of what we're going to feel like it comes Olympics, especially as well if we're having like GB camps, and then we'll probably have like a camp prior to the Olympics, of where we go away to like Singapore or something like that, like a training camp, so like practice for the climate and stuff like that. But yeah, it will be a lot of going away in 1 year, but I suppose that's just the uncertainty and excitement of sevens rugby, isn't it?
Exactly. And just before you do leave us, what would it mean to you to be on that podium next year?
See, even thinking about it gives me goosebumps. Like, honestly, it would be like my absolute dream come true. Like, I thinking about it, I can't even put it into words. That would be my dream, and I don't think anything could ever top that, because that's literally like all I've ever wanted to do, is to be an Olympian and have an Olympic medal. And I know as well, like the repercussions that it would have on women's rugby, like with the girls in 2016 just missing out on a medal. Like, for us as a women's squad, for us to be able to get a medal at the Olympics, that would bring in so many more girls who would want to play rugby, and like us, like setting up for the next generation. Like, that's all, like, even if we're not just doing it for ourselves, we're doing it for everybody else as well. And it's like, that would just get the RFU to like maybe fund more money into both of our programs, that we can get more people to come train in, get more people contracted. It just means that it would just open so many more opportunities for us, like not even just like having the dream it like come true, it would boost everything else for women's rugby. So yeah.
Perfect. Well, brilliant. Thank you very much for giving us your time this morning, Abby. Best of luck with all the home training, and I know you've got a massive year ahead, and everything's going to go brilliantly for you, and hopefully we'll catch up next year when you've won a medal.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right. Well, that moves us quite swiftly and on into Julia, because you were obviously due to go to Tokyo, and that meant you were at the press conference, briefing over Zoom, obviously, with President Back of the IOC. So I just wanted to firstly get from you, what was that meeting like?
Yeah, it was really interesting just to kind of hear what they had to say. It was just a few days after they announced that the Olympics was going to be postponed. And so I think there were still a lot of things that we didn't know. At that time, we didn't know that when the Olympics was going to be. They were talking about maybe they could have it in spring or summer or whenever. So there were still a lot of unknowns at that point. But yeah, I guess it was just interesting to kind of hear what they had to say about postponing it. And interesting to see where they thought it was going to go. And that's also interesting to see now, obviously we're having a summer Olympics again, which does seem to fit in more with what other federations want and what other events want. So yeah.
And from a personal perspective, obviously having been in athletics all your life, like I know injuries have sort of prevented you from getting to that Olympic level, but as a reporter having the opportunity to go there, obviously your first reaction must have been similar to Abby's in a way, just gutted when the announcement came.
Yeah, of course. Like it was something I think I found out in January that I was going to be going to the Olympics to report on it, and obviously it was so exciting then. And so to hear it cancelled, obviously it is devastating, but you do kind of look at the global picture and you understand why and kind of see why. So you do understand it, and then hopefully next year it'll be bigger and better.
Yeah, and in terms of, now we'll get into from an athletics perspective, how do you see this playing into athletes' training plans, into obviously this potentially having a whole summer season, outdoor season wiped out? Because I know they're keeping pretty coy on that, but how do you think that's going to affect people the year before Olympics? Because normally that's the biggest preparation year, and they could use the whole season.
So that was the interesting thing about the the way the IOC handled the postponing of the Olympics, when they came out and said, oh, we want 4 more weeks to kind of decide whether we're going to postpone it or cancel it or do whatever. The thing is, at that point, yes, they maybe could have had an Olympics in July this year, but at that point, that wasn't the question anymore. The question was, our athletes can't train. So even if we could have that Olympics, our athletes aren't going to be in shape for it. They aren't going to get the races for it. And I think that's why they did have to postpone it, because there was so much uncertainty for the athletes. Training wise, yeah, it is really hard. From an athletics standpoint, the World Athletics have now said that any races between now and I think it's the 1st of December this year, even if you can race and you can get the Olympic qualification time or throw or distance or whatever, they won't count. So that's kind of throwing athletes for a loop. You know, if they want to compete later in the year, there are some full marathons, for example, then even if they get the Olympic qualification now, they can't do it. So that has thrown them a little bit for a loop, but also you can kind of see where the Olympics, where the World Athletics are coming from, in that obviously there's now extended time to qualify.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it'll be tough. There are some athletes who don't have that time or that distance, and they need it, and they kind of don't really know when they get it. But also the fact that it is a summer Olympics has helped them, because that was the other thing about if it was the spring Olympics, athletes were saying, well, we don't know when we're going to qualify.
And for Team GB specifically, obviously we're in Britain. What do you think this does for our medal hopes? Does it improve them? Does it? Because I know there's been lots of theories floating about. Do you think this gives us more chance with obviously some of our younger athletes, which has been the focus going into Tokyo, having another year's experience behind them, a year's training, a year stronger?
Yeah, I think some will help them. There's Gemma Riki, who's quite young, and she broke a lot of British records indoors this year. And she was looking in really good shape for the Olympics, but she is still really young, so the extra year will help her. There's been Ailey Doyle, who's had a baby this year, and she was targeting that Olympics, but obviously a year extra will help her from recovering from that. And then you've got people like Dina Escher-Smith, Katarina Johnson-Thompson, who had absolutely phenomenal years last year, and we were looking, saying, yeah, they hopefully will medal, but also they've been improving steadily year on year. And so I think an extra year could help them, and we'll hope to see that improvement even more. And with Dina, actually, some of her opponents, Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price, for example, she'll be, I think, 35 at the next Olympics. So I think it won't help her as much, but it will help Dina. And so it will help Dina in the fact that some of her competitors might not be looking at that as much.
No, definitely. And obviously, Laoishe, you're being a gymnast, and that sort of your area of expertise, again, being quite a young dominant sport, so people are in their primes much younger. What sort of effect do you think this will have on the gymnasts?
I mean, it is a bit of a mix, because these gymnasts are used to training 6 hours a day and sometimes over 24 hours a week, so it is going to be a really big change for them. And in gymnastics, sometimes a couple of days off can take weeks to get back. So there has been a bit of a struggle there, because there's only so much they can do at home. With gymnastics being based off equipment, they simply need the equipment to do their training. So there is a bit of a worry there, but it's quite hard with the older gymnasts as well, because all of their training the last 3 years will have been going towards the Olympics, with what training they've done, with what competitions they picked and sponsors. So to be training at their peak in the last year, to then having to try and peak again in this year, is going to be quite a big ask, I think, because again, we obviously don't know when this lockdown is going to be, and we don't know when everyone will be back to training. So there's also a question of, will we now be unprepared for the next year Olympics? So yeah, it's worrying, but I think that we'll have a stronger team for it. Like Julia was saying, everyone's going to have that extra year of practice and that extra year of experience. So I think it can work in both ways.
And obviously, I'll come back to you, Julia, but I'll ask you both on this. But how do you think this affects the next Olympic cycle? Obviously, that will be a 3-year cycle. People, if you're in any sport, Olympic sport, you will hear people bang on about 4-year cycle. What do you think the 3-year cycle does for athletes who are maybe coming up looking at 2024 as their target? Does it change anything?
I don't think so. I mean, it might change their training slightly, but I don't think it will have too much of an impact, really.
Yeah. And for you, Julia, particularly in athletics, do you think there'll be much of it? Obviously, they moved the World Championship slightly, the 2022 one.
Yeah, so the World Championships was meant to be 2021, and then they've moved it to 2022 because of the Olympics clash. So that is going to be the year that's, I think, is a bit crazy for a lot of athletes. Sorry if you've got questions coming up on this, but so the World Championships, I've got the dates in front of me. World Championships are in 2022, 15th of July to 24th of July, and then 3 days later it's the Commonwealth Games, which end on the 7th of August. And then 4 days after that is the European Championships. So I don't know if anyone's going to try and do that triple, because that would just be crazy. But that's going to be such a big year for some people. And you have to think, as an athlete, I don't know, obviously World Championships is the big one. And so I think a lot will be prioritising that. But then I think we'll see that the standard at the Commonwealth Games will suffer because of that. And same with the European Championships. And so having such a big year, and then the Olympics is 2 years later, that's going to be a tricky 3-year cycle, I think, for athletes to balance. No,
I completely agree. Now, we know your other passion, obviously, Laoishe, is horses. So from an equestrian perspective, again, are horses, their training schedules staying relatively stable during the lockdown in terms of Olympic athletes? Are they able to ride? Are they able to practice their jumping, practice their dressage?
I think so. I know that most people want to be and will be exercising their horses every day. They're just like athletes like athletics and gymnastics. They'll need to be exercised every day. But again, a lot of events have been cancelled, and I think it will have an effect because they're going to have to maybe slow their training down a bit so it's not as intense, because they will have been peaking again this year. So they'll have to slow it down, I think, to then be able to make it more intense in a few months' time, ready for the Olympics next year.
Okay, and we'll come on to horse racing in a minute, because I know you've got a bit to say about a few announcements we've had from the BHA in the last week and certain other bodies. But just jumping back to you, Julia, in terms of, do you think that having it in the summer with the European Football Championships, with all these other sports events that are going to be crammed into next summer, do you think that will affect Olympic viewing, or do you think we're going to see it as the big celebration? This is our post-coronavirus sort of party for the world.
Yeah, I absolutely think that everyone's just going to really get on board with it, and it will be a big party. You know, we all wanted it this year, and then I think there's something about the Olympics that you just start getting into it no matter what. Like, I always just find myself watching the craziest sports, and you just like get into it. And I think even more so after everything that's happened this year, after the fact that it's been postponed, and all the awful things that are happening, I think when we come out of it the other side next year, the Olympics is just going to be the biggest party, and it'll be amazing. And
I know you guys obviously both massively passionate about Olympic sports and everything. I know there's been a lot of talk during the weeks of Tokyo this year, BBC should show every day of London, and that, I think that would be amazing. But while we close off the Olympic section, I wanted to get each of your top Olympic moment of all time. So your favourite moment of the Olympics. I put you guys on the spot here, but I just know.
I know this is going to be so obvious, but Super Saturday, London 2012, Jess Ennis, Mo Farah, Greg Rutherford, you just can't beat that. I've actually got all the DVDs and I've been watching them, and that Super Saturday is just, the best. You can't beat that in British Olympic sport. Love it. And then you, Laoishe?
I've actually lost Zoom somewhere. Okay, you're back. So an email popped up when I couldn't see myself. It would have to probably be Beth Twiddle winning her medal on the uneven bars. Like, being the first woman to do that was really special. And she'd been putting so many years into it. So to watch her do that was amazing.
Yeah. And I think for me again, I'd look at Catherine Granger when she got her gold at 2012, having had all the silvers, as a great moment. But outside of that as well, the hockey girls in Rio, I think that was particularly what that's done for that sport. And I know Abi mentioned that what a medal could do for women's rugby. I think we've seen hockey at a grassroots level, numbers have sort of gone through the roof since Rio, particularly for young girls. And that's the sort of thing with the team sports that you can see that you don't see in maybe the individual sports. But great moments, obviously. I don't think any of us will ever forget Super Saturday, that night where you were, what you were doing. It's one of those sporting moments. Anyway, moving on. We said we were going to talk about horse racing, Laoishe. Now, obviously, this is peak flat season we are about to come into, and most of it's been ravaged, apart from perhaps Ascot, who are saying they're going to have it behind closed doors. But I just sort of wanted to get, are we looking at maybe losing the whole flat racing season with these horses not being race fit?
I think so, because before a competition we'd need at least 3 weeks before we had a competition. So I mean, it's just so uncertain, isn't it? We just don't know when the lockdown is going to be over, so it's a hard one to answer. But I mean, I don't want to say that it's going to be crossed out, but I think it could possibly be, yeah.
Yeah. And what was your opinion on Ascot? Obviously, a lot of cancelled. The Derby got cancelled and a few other notables. Obviously, we lost the Grand National, but it's a bit different for the jump season. Being at the end of their season, they can sort of just write the rest of their season off and it not have too much of an impact. We were lucky to have Cheltenham, which I know you were there, and I'll get you to comment on that in a minute. But in terms of Ascot, what did you think of their announcement the other day? Do you think it was bold?
I do. I don't know. I just don't know how it's going to go ahead when the government aren't even able to tell us what's going on. I just don't see how they're able to tell people that it's going to go ahead. I know that the BHA are really on it in terms of horse and people welfare, so I know that safety will be first. And I just don't know. You know, if one person contracted COVID-19 or if one person died of it because of that. Because of it going ahead, I don't know how anyone could forgive themselves. It'd be really upsetting. So I think that, it was a bold statement. I personally don't know how it's going to go ahead. And
in terms of safety, do you think we were right to have Cheltenham now living in this? Obviously, I know from a sports fan's perspective, you got the impression throughout the week that was going to be the last big sport we'd have for a while. I'll get both of your opinions on this, but you first, Laoishe. Do you think it was right to go ahead? I know you were there on Gold Cup Day, but...
Yes, it is a hard one because I was there and I did want it to go ahead. But if someone had been able to show us, 3 weeks ahead that we are now, how bad it is and how much it's damaged the world and UK, I wouldn't have wanted to go and put my family and friends at risk, and I wouldn't have wanted it to go ahead. So I don't really think it should have gone ahead, but I suppose we didn't know how much damage it was causing at the time.
Yeah, and you, Julia, in terms of sports events, firstly, do you think we should have had Cheltenham? And then, what's the sort of thinking in athletics? Do you think we'll see it behind closed doors, maybe later in the summer, to get some competition for these athletes?
On the Cheltenham, I think I agree with Laoishe. Like, obviously, looking back at it now, we can all say, "Oh, that shouldn't have gone ahead." But at the time, it was kind of difficult to make that call, and I do see why it did go ahead. And I think things just moved so rapidly, and that we were in a different place, kind of day by day even, we were in such a different place. So yeah, I agree with Laoishe, really. It's a really difficult call. Athletics behind closed doors, probably not. It's quite a hard sport to kind of do without the fans. And I think that athletes would prefer to just race with a bit of atmosphere.
Brilliant. And yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens with some of these events and how sport is integrated back into society, just as sort of we are integrated back into society. And that's about all for today. Just before we finish off, have you got girls up to anything interesting today? I know the sun's shining, but obviously we're trapped indoors. Anything exciting on the schedule for the weekend?
There's really not.
No. Yeah, I mean, same as every day, really.
Yeah, week 3's kicking in now. I think people have done all their odd little things they do around the house, and it's a bit boredom now. Anyway, thank you very much for coming on here. And if you want to look at more of the girls' work, obviously follow Sports Gazette or go on the Sports Gazette website. Some articles about all sorts of things from there, and indeed, I know Laoishe's written one about the virtual Grand National from last week. Julia's written a write-up from that Thomas Bach conference. So if you want more details about that, get into some of the girls' content and some of our other reporters, obviously, you've seen over the last couple of weeks. That's it. I'll be back next week with another episode. So we'll look forward to seeing you then. But the last thing to say, as we say every week, stay safe, stay at home. It will be over soon. I hope you girls look after your families. And yeah, well, I'll be back next week. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us.